Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Obi Stanley. I will be talking about front end and back end developers today. So, who is a back end developer? Front end versus back end developers. Okay, let's get into this. Front end is the part of your website you can see, and then let's talk about the buttons, the colors, etc., etc. Everything you can see on the website is front end. Then talk about the back end. Backend is the part where you don't see, like when a user registers, those information, email, password, they are stored in the database. That is what the backend does. The backend does the story. So it's just like a restaurant when you come in, you see the tables, the chairs, everything you see there. Doesn't show you what really happens at the back of a restaurant. It doesn't show you how the food is being processed. It doesn't show you what the chef is doing. So that is the back end. Now back to the front end. We talk about we've talked about the login. When you click on login and it shows the box, those actions are actions of the front end. Then back end checks if you are actually allowed inside. If you are actually back end checks if you are allowed to be in that login page. Also checks if you're already logged in, if the auth is set, that is authentication is set. So yes, a website can look very fine but without backend. Yes, you can have a website that is built that does most of everything, but it's just a plain website. There is no back-end interaction associated with it. That is just a basic, simple website. It's possible to build a website with just HTML and CSS, even without JavaScript, and host it. Yes, it's possible. So, and you can actually use such websites to do whatever you want to do. Maybe a business website where people can do one or two things, maybe contact you and etc. So yes, the website can be very fine and still no back end. For example, now a real life example of uh, how back end is different from a front end. Let's use a website that everybody visits, most people visit. For example, Facebook. Let's use Facebook as an example. When you go to Facebook, the first page you are going to see is probably the authentication page, which is uh, which is where you are supposed to log in your details. And if you don't have your details, you have to go to register and create account. Now, the buttons you are going to click and everything on that page is the front end. Both the design, the image, the Facebook logo, the things they wrote on the page is they are all front end. Then by the time you enter your email address and password, the back end, the front end sends this data to the back end to process. So if you're using PHP or any backend programming language, that programming language will check Facebook database to confirm that the details you've entered are in the database and they match, they correspond. That means on your own table, you have this email as your email and this password as the password associated with this email or phone number as the case may be. So the backend process this information, checking the database. And so backend programming languages work with database. Database is where data is stored, let's say in table or whatever it is that data is stored. All your data, your amount, the account balance you have in your baby bank is stored in your database, stored in the database. So it checks and then it matches this data and then sends this the whatever is fine. If the data is there, it goes successful. If not, it goes back to tell you that oh, the data you are using to log in does not match. It's not in our database and you are not allowed to log in. So backend is the programming language that backend programming language is the language that checks this and makes sure that this is working. So if, for instance, a backend programming language makes a sloppy mistake, that is where people's data can easily be hacked. So if Facebook backend programmers made a mistake and, for instance, they didn't check for password to associate explicitly with email or phone number, maybe they just check only for email. If the email exists, log this person in. That means if you enter any email that belongs to Facebook database, it will log in without checking the password. Meanwhile, front-end developers, they don't have this kind of issue. Once they have developed what you can see, they don't have any mathematics behind the scenes, dangerous mathematics, dangerous logics behind it. Okay, to answer the third question, which one pays more? Well, the simple answer is most of the time, back end pays more. And here is why. Backend handles security, payments, and other major functionalities of a website. Not just what you see or all those, sorry to the front end, all those play parts of the website. Most people think that the parts you can see on the website are mostly for plays, but it's not. Sorry to the front end developers. So back end pays more because the hardest part of this job is back end. Back end developers don't sleep. Most of the time, they are always 24/7 awake. To give you an instance, if payment fails by 2 a.m., the company will call you by 2 a.m., just exactly 2 a.m., to ask you why this is happening, why this is happening, why this is not happening. So on payday, it's mostly the back-end developer that smile more because their jobs are really taxing and they handle real life problems. So back-end is the answer.